VFR Zen signing on today with a NC700X Honda. I believe this is a 2015 model. I'm taking it out today for a little test ride, and like the Kawasaki Versys 650 that I now own, this is what I would call an urban assault vehicle. This is a pretty straightforward design. It's got your twin-cylinder motor, 2-into-1 exhaust, non-adjustable suspension, which you would think might be a problem, but really it isn't. It's dialed in very nicely for city riding, especially. Then we've got the Nissan floating caliper front brake. It's only got a single disc, but it really does a good job. And then the rear has a single disc as well. Nice quiet exhaust note, although somewhat deep actually. Although Honda doesn't advertise it, the motor is actually half of a Honda Fit car engine. It's like they lopped off the other two cylinders and then shoved it into this chassis. Now you might think, well, that's not very exciting, and you'd probably be right, but then you get on it and it has excellent bottom range, low end pickup. For a short shifting burst through the city, it's actually easier to ride quickly and get in and out of, tough spots than my Versys 650, which is, like I said, a little bit more of a, the power delivery on that has a lot more top end and really good mid-range, and the bottom end is decent too, but the torque down low on this is definitely better. You short shift it, and by that I mean you don't even bother going to redline. It redlines at 6,500. I rarely, if ever, take it up that high because the power really starts to fall off around 5,500 or so. So I basically shift between 3 and 5. This particular bike has the aftermarket windscreen, which is provides obviously a little bit more wind protection than your stock screen. The suspension, like I said, even though it's non-adjustable, is actually very compliant and doesn't pogo stick you around. It's pretty well sorted for a I'm a 190-pound rider, and it feels great. The other interesting thing about it is that it's obviously a pretty reasonably priced bike. So, you ask yourself, well, what kind of a person is going to ride this thing? Is it going to be an entry-level person, or perhaps someone a little more seasoned? And I think the answer to that is both. I think it'd be an excellent bike for a newer rider, because it does have enough personality, enough get up and go and utility to be a bike that you would have for a long time and not necessarily want to trade up to something else. But also, I think for an older rider or someone who's just been riding a long time and is interested in something that's economical, that is fun to ride. When I was looking at trading in my VFR, or getting rid of my VFR and going towards something a little more comfortable, I did look at this bike. I ended up going with the Versys predominantly because I like the hard bags, and I liked the fact that the motor was a little more engaging for backroad riding. But honestly, if I were doing mostly commuting and riding in town, I think this is one of the best bikes I've ridden. Now, the other thing I was going to mention is the fuel economy. The fuel economy on this bike is about as good as it gets. Right now it's listed as averaging 66.3 miles per gallon on this tank of gas. I've seen it go as high as the low 70s, and as low as about 60, which is really very impressive. My Versys, for comparison purposes, you know, it'll do about 55 on the back roads if I'm just doing like 45, 50 mile an hour cruising. And in town, it gets more around the area of like 46 to 47. And my overall fuel economy on my Versys is perhaps about 48 miles per gallon, 49, whereas this is consistently in the low 60s to mid 60s. The gas tank is, I believe, is only 3.6 gallons, but with that kind of range, it's really not an issue. So, all in all, if you're looking to get a bike and you're not interested in the smaller displacement offerings like the 500s or the 250s, I think this NC700X would be an excellent choice. Honda makes also I think a CTX 700, which is kind of like the cruiser style version of this, with the same motor and a similar sort of low center of gravity layout. However, it's more stretched out and kind of more of a cruiser offering. Honda also makes the automatic transmission version of this, which of course I'm not riding. This is a standard clutch driven bike, and I still prefer the clutch just because I'm old school. I've always found shifting to be just a inherent part of riding. The coordination you need for shifting gears it's a skill that once you learn, it's like you don't want to give it up. But for those individuals that have got hand troubles, carpal tunnel or whatever, it's actually a nice way to extend your riding. The riding position on this is a little bit more cramped than my Versys. Not terribly so. I mean, the handlebars are in a great position. There's no complaints there. I think the foot pegs are a little higher than my Versys 650. That's not necessarily a problem, but I do think that if you're out on the road for several hours, especially for long distance trips, it might be more cramped than you would want, but certainly nothing that's going to make you say this is an uncomfortable bike. Yeah, I'm just going to do a loop around here just to sort of illustrate. Bike's cornering abilities. It can go around this way and then come back through it. It really does lean over nicely. That center of gravity is just dialed in. Now we'll stop up here and do another walk around. Well, so in conclusion, I'll just say that the Honda NC700X is an excellent bike, especially for around town riding. I feel like if you're interested in getting a bike with excellent fuel economy and still, you want to have a little bit of fun on the weekends with it, you couldn't go wrong with choosing this bike. Again, I think I prefer my Versys on balance for the spectrum of riding that I do, but honestly, there are times when I'm riding my Kawasaki through town, I wished I were on this bike because I feel like it's just easier to navigate through traffic and is in some ways a little more enjoyable to ride. The other thing I was going to mention is that the transmission is typical Honda, buttery smooth, really sorted, just snick through the gears, never a false shift. So again, I've really been pleased with the transmission. I think the brakes are good. I really think the only thing that would be nice to have would be perhaps a little bit more power up top, but again, you know, the decisions they've made have turned this bike into something that's really unique. So I think on balance, an excellent choice for anyone interested in getting into bikes, or for those who have been riding and want to get something that's a little more practical and still have some fun on. So with that, VFR Zen is signing off. Ride safe out there on the road to Valhalla. The engine layout also is kind of interesting because it is more of a forward-leaning motor to allow the bike's center of gravity to be very low. And as a consequence, what they've done is put here a very interesting storage compartment called a frunk. At least that's what the people on the interwebs call it. And as you can see, you just lift it up like so. You stuff your stuff in here. You can put some groceries, whatever. It's pretty nice. The gas tank is actually underneath the back seat.